Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to be learning about Sage Intelligence reporting, and we are going to concentrate on creating non-financial statements. So the first thing we have to be aware of is that there's a difference in creating financial and non-financial statements. I am William Wingson, and today our agenda, we will include a review of the Sage Intelligence. We'll talk about the design overview. We will also go in detail about the connector, the report manager. We will build a new report, and we will also define new containers. And we'll show you, finally, how to save reports. So once you have modified your reports, how to save them. Our learning objectives today will include how to build new reports with Sage 300 Intelligence, how to define new data containers and expressions, and I will also use a word, maybe instead of using expression, interchangeably with the word fields, so we can use how to add fields and expressions. We'll also work with data that we have outputted into Excel, using features of Excel to make the data turn into information that can be used to manage your business. Also, we'll discuss reports, how to save the reports, how to manage the reports, etc. What is Sage 300 Intelligence Reporting? It is a reporting tool that is easy and yet powerful because it is Excel-based. And it is a report that people want to learn how to use, and therefore it becomes easy for them to use because the sheer fact they want to learn it. Given a choice between, let's say, Excel and Crystal, most accountants would probably choose Excel because they're already familiar with it. They have probably been using it for a number of years. We will talk about a quick, go through a quick comparison between some of the reporting tools in Sage 300. We did this in our last presentation, but we'll do it again. The top row deals with the financial reports. So Sage Intelligence and the financial reporter both use Excel to build reports. The difference is that Sage Intelligence can be used in different modules or all modules. It can also be used outside of Sage 300. While the GL Financial Reporter, you can only access the GL data. That is, you cannot access data, for example, customer information, whether you want to do a detailed breakdown of invoices that are owed, etc. But the Sage Intelligence can access that kind of information. It is also easy to do multi-company consolidations using the Sage Intelligence reporting tool. While in the GL Financial Reporter, you cannot do a single currency reporting only. The intelligence compared to Crystal reports. They both have reports that can be designed. I personally think the Sage Intelligence report is easier to customize because of my familiarity with Excel. And most people are probably familiar with Excel. But the Crystal reports also can be modified using Crystal reports. Many standard reports are offered with intelligence, same with the Crystal report. All the modules in Sage 300, the reporting out of the box uses Crystal reports, except, of course, your financial statements, which uses Excel. So the Sage Intelligence reporting is easier to customize, but in the Crystal reports, you do have the ability to customize reports. In intelligence, the report, once it is run, tends to be more interactive. If you want to make a modification, let's say change the year or something, you would have to go out of the report in Crystal and then select another option or parameter, and then run the report again. In Sage 300, the interactivity with the data is a lot easier. You just make a selection and the data will automatically change. For example, if I have 2 years worth of data and I only want to look at 1 year worth of information, then I change the year and automatically it will change the information in the report itself. The last time we mentioned this, I think it's an important thing to keep in mind because you're creating reports and you want to have some sort of process, some sort of method that you can do it quickly and efficiently. You don't want to be trying to think of things during the process itself in terms of designing it and building it at the same time, because that tends to be a little bit inefficient. It's equivalent to, let's say, building a house. You have to have some sort of plan, or you should have some sort of plan before you start building, because if you know the height and weight of the house, you have to know the corresponding foundation, for example. I mean, if you're building a little garage, then the foundation is not as big as, let's say, you're going to build a house where you need, the foundation needs more weight, to take more weight, and also depending on the size of the house, the infrastructure, the database, the foundation of the house will have to fit the size of the house, obviously. So planning is important. So I suggest this 5-step process, so to think about it. The first step is to have a good needs analysis of what you need for your report. What do I want the report to do? What are my goals for this report? So if you have some clear guidelines, it becomes a lot easier for the next step, which is how to plan the report. What do I want to see it in a pivot table? Is it preferable to have it as a chart, for example? Okay. Am I going to do some analysis when the report is run? For example, I might want to see a list of all the customers. Do I want to see the listing by grouping, for example? Okay. All of these things are easy to organize. Once your goal is done, the planning becomes a lot easier. The next step is you would have to go and develop the reports. So you would actually do the work, build out the reports. After the reports are built, then what you normally do is you deploy it to the internal customers, whoever is going to use that report. At this point, usually, sometimes some tweaking is involved. Somebody sees the report, they don't like the font size or something about the report that there might be a need to change. And even how to deploy the report, who to deploy the report to is often an important consideration. For example, in Sage 300, it is possible to deploy a report to a certain person based on information. Example, if my sales figure dropped below a certain number, then I might want the senior sales manager to be aware of the sales figure. So that can be built in with Sage Intelligence reporting. And finally, once you have deployed it, there is sometimes a tendency to have the solution evolve. It becomes, once I have a basic report, I might want to change it for some reason, because the information I'm looking for I get, but then I see, once I see I might see the way that I can use the information to better meet different needs that I have. So usually there's a part where the report itself evolved into something more than what was originally planned. And then basically you go over the process again. What is it that we wanted to do in addition to what it has already done? And then you plan, and then you see if you can modify the report, etc. The overview of Sage Intelligence, this diagram explains it quite a bit. It's a simple diagram. What it's saying is that if I have different databases, the connector piece in the intelligence product will pull that information. So if I have Sage 300 data, it will pull information from there. It is also possible to pull information from, let's say, an Excel sheet, or let's say a CRM product. As long as the database is ODBC compliant, it is possible to pull the data in. Once you have a connector, the next step is to go to the report manager and start building the report. Once the report is built, then you would run it. It goes out into Excel workbook, and you can then further organize the data so that it's now turned into information. Once you have done this, then you don't want to do this every single time. You might want to save the formatting. So from the workbook, it can be then saved back to a report manager, so the next time you run it, it will have what you need. On the side here, you will notice we have something called the Report Designer. That is a tool that is used for financial reports. Below that, we have something called a distribution. So there's a whole feature to how to distribute these products. So these intelligence reports can be run at a specific time, and then email or put into a folder or up to an FTP site where it can be accessed by the stakeholders, people who wanted the information in the first place. At this point is what I mentioned before, where you can distribute based on a certain criteria. So it's very useful. Now, having talked about this, sometimes people are still confused as to the connector, the report manager. So I've come up with a little analogy that will help you put things into perspective. Think of the database section over here as a huge warehouse. Let's say, if you could imagine Home Depot or some huge mega store with lots of things in it. Like we have lumber, we have nails, we have paint, we have all kinds of things, glass to build a window, etc. And let's say we wanted to build, let's say, a doghouse. If I'm building the doghouse in an area in the warehouse, right? Now, if I wanted to go get the lumber, I'll run down to one aisle, get the lumber, and start, oh, I need a nail, or I need nails. So I have to run down to another section of the warehouse. It will take, doing it that way might be a little bit inefficient, because every time you need something, you'll have to go and run to get it from some part of the warehouse. So what if it was possible to plan ahead and say, well, in order to build this doghouse, I need this material. I would need some lumber. I would need something to cut the lumber. I would need nails to nail it together. I might need hinges to put a little door on it, or a window of some kind. Whatever I need for that house, right? So if by planning I figure out what my materials are, then I use the connector to go and grab the data that I need, not all the data from the database. So the connector is, think of it like a room where I'm going to pull information or pull the materials for my doghouse into that area. When I'm actually ready to build the doghouse, I might put a workbench in there, which is the report manager, and then I would say, okay, let's go build it. So I would have everything within arm's length, and I would then cut the lumber, nail it together, etc. And when I'm finished, paint it up and put it out as a ready product. So this is what the report manager does. It pulls the information from the workspace that you have created with the connector, and then pulls the information that you actually need. So there might be some leftover stuff. There might be stuff that you don't need for this particular report. So then we will push it out into Excel. Once it's in Excel, we can then put the final touches to it. We can then say, well, look, I wanted to put a little tag, a nameplate on it, or I might want to change how do I want to organize the doghouse in terms of theming. I just wanted to call it a doghouse. One might be a deluxe doghouse. The other one might be, the basic model. Okay, so and then we might save that information back into the desk, into the thing, so that next time I go to build it, I know exactly what to call it in the future. So this is a high-level overview of how the Sage Intelligent product works. Some of the basic elements now I'll talk about. The connection. So the connection is, how do I connect to the different databases, right? Which database am I going to connect to? The next question we may ask ourselves is, what data do I need? Do I need every single thing from the database? That is probably not likely. Okay, if you want customer information, then you might want to say, look, I need to look at the customer tables, not every single table in that database. And once I get the table, the next thing is what information in that table, because the table might contain lots of expression of fields. So think of it like I go into the nail section. And when I look at the nail section, I say, oh my goodness, there's all kinds of nails. There's nails to the roof. There's nails for interior nails. There's nails for drywall. What nails do I actually need? What expressions do I need? Or what fields do I need? So I will use the word field and expression interchangeably a lot in this session. Okay. What information do I need? Finally, after we got which database, we know what data we want, we have the fields. The next step is we need to go and build the report. So what do I want on the report? How do I want this doghouse to look like? Is it going to be a basic square box, or is it going to have compartments within the doghouse? What do I want it to look like? Okay, so these basic steps here are contained within the different modules. So the connector module deals with which database, what data, and what fields do I need, while the report manager deals with how do I want to create the report and what exactly is going to go on the report. So the connector, to summarize, allows for connection to the data source. It allows for defining the data containers. We will use AutoConnect so that the reports can be defined for a number of Sage 300 companies. So you will be able to create a report in one company and then export it and import it into another company. We will also talk about the application object model, which is available for Sage 300 products. Okay? The application object model is extremely useful when we are creating a container, because we are going to go into the database in a particular table, and the fields and the names of the tables are in the programming language. Well, when I say programming language, it's in a name that the programmers have called it. And those names are sometimes not as friendly as you would expect that they should be. Or it's just sometimes more efficient to put a name in. So now, after that, we'll talk about the report manager, how we can create reports. Then we can filter the reports. What is the size of my doghouse? What information do I need? Is it a small dog, or is it for a big dog? It all depends. So we might need to filter some of the data afterwards. And we can show how we can test for the report output. Okay. Now, before we move on, you would have, depending on what you want to do, you might need different licenses. So for example, to use the connector module, you would need a connector license. So a connector license, a site license, is one license that is used by everyone. The report manager, however, is a workstation license. Typically, in an organization, you don't need a lot of it. If not everybody's going to create reports, then you will not need as much report manager licenses. So maybe you might need 3 or 4 report manager licenses. Again, this is for people who are actually going to create new reports. If all you want to do is run a report, then you could buy a license that's way cheaper, called the report viewer license. Okay, and allows you to run reports wherever and however it's decided upon when you're planning your reporting needs. Finally, you have something called a report designer license, which again is a site license, and it doesn't work by itself. You have to have the report manager to have the report designer license working. Okay, the report designer is used for financial reports. Okay, it makes the financial reports a lot easier. Okay, we'll now move on to, let's get started. Let's go and build some reports. So what I will do is I will dive off into my Sage 300. So I would minimize this and just go into Sage 300. I would go into Intelligence and I would open up my report manager. So I've already opened it up just to speed up things a little bit. At the tray at the bottom, you would see R, meaning it's the report designer. C would be for the connector module. Okay. What I would like to do at this point is I would like to create a new folder. So all I have to do is right-click on the home, highlight it, right-click, and add folder. This is not the only way of doing it. If you notice on top of the ribbon, you would see an icon for adding folders. So let's call this Super Training. So I've just created a new folder. What I was talking about before, again, another way of creating the folder is just simply click on the Add button up here, and you would see a screen that you are now familiar with. So the first thing is we add a folder. The next step after adding the folder is I might want to add, I'm going to create a report based on existing containers. So there are standard reports that come with the Sage Intelligence, which is all in this area down here. So for example, if I go to Purchases and double click on it, you will see that this is a standard report. If I were to run this, you can run it. This message here is just saying that if you wanted to modify it, you would have to make a copy of it and then modify it. So this is to prevent people from modifying reports and then saying, oops, I need to get back to the original. I made too many errors. I changed it too much. So you can always modify a report. You just have to save it under a different name. Okay? So Sage 300 has wisely put it in such a form that you can make changes to it, but still keep the original intact. Okay. So we have. So if I wanted to create a new report again, right? What I would have to do here is I can click on Add Report, or I could right-click and then you would see Add Report. Either way, it's the same thing. So this time I'll click on this, and the report. From this screen, you're aware that there are different kinds of reports. There's a standard report. There's union report. So again, if you are from the, let's say if you're familiar with crystal reports, think of a union report like sub-reports. And then you're combining them into one main report. Today, for the sake of simplicity and time, we are going to use a standard report. Okay. The name of this report, I'm going to call it Customer Invoices. And hit OK. So now we have just created a name for the report. The next step is going to ask us, what container do you need? If I had to build a doghouse, which room are you going in? So there might be a room for building beds. There might be a room for building dog houses. Okay? So the room for building beds will have different material than the room for building dog houses. So I would have to select here the container that I need. So in this case, I'm going to use, let's say, Sales Master, which is already built for me. And I'm then going to hit and click on the OK button. And now it's going to ask you to pick all the fields that you require for this report. So in my case, this particular report, I'm going to pick customer number, move that to the middle, the customer name, customer code, which is the customer number, the document date, the document number, and probably look for, let's say, a line amount, which is the amount. Let's pick this one here. Maybe, let's say this one. I can do just the total, maybe. Okay? So I can pick more than one if I wanted to. Okay? And I select, I hit OK. So I've just created a simple report. Okay? Now, if I highlight the report, it will say, I go into the column, this is the order in which it will appear. If I wanted to change the order, right, then I can delete. If I say, okay, I don't need this anymore, I can remove it. It's still in there, but I'm not using it. So this is, I'm building the doghouse. This is the exact material I want. What I can do here is, let's say, maybe delete that also. Okay. And if I'm ready to run the report, just highlight it now and run. And this will take information from the database and put it into Excel. So once the data gets into Excel, Excel will open up and you will see the data. And what you might see here, you might say to yourself, oh my God, yes, I see data, but that's exactly what it is. It's just data. You would see here there's a credit note for Mr. Ronald Black. So you could organize this data using simple features. For example, if you wanted to sort this data, you can just say, okay, data sort. Maybe I want to sort it by customer name and also, let's say, customer, let's say, document date. Okay? So you can organize the data by the date, by the customer. But again, it's still a little bit difficult to see. So you can create some groupings. So you can go into subtotal here, and you can say I want to group it by, let's say, customer name. And let's put a subtotal down at the bottom, say OK. So what I've done here is I've put subtotals after each customer. If I collapse this, collapse all of it, so we would see something like this with a total. If you're interested, let's say, in grouping by the account, how many invoices? Okay, so what I can do is I can go back to this, just to show you, right? And I can say, okay, let's group it again. No, let's do a subtotal. I don't want to replace the existing subtotal, but let's say I wanted to do a count. Let's say instead of a sum here, I'm going to change it to a count. And let's say based on, I can leave it like this, based on customer name. I can just leave it like that, just have the count, and then say OK. So here I would see there's a count of 13. If I count this up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You get the idea. It's 13 invoices up there. Okay? So you see it goes to 14. You can just use the size, but it doesn't have the first one. So you can see that the count is correct. And again, you can collapse these things very quickly by just clicking on this or this, and you would see the total, grand total count. So there's 17 documents and 137 documents for a total amount of roughly $97,000. Okay. So again, all I did just down there was just using Excel features for the system. Okay. I could try. Sometimes people want to, let's say, export only the cells that are visible. So if I were to hide these, for example, column, hide, and let's say for some reason I want to give somebody the information. Well, let's say what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside here. I'm going to say find, go to special, and I want to, let's say, let's do only visible cells. Okay. So I am going to copy, and if I wanted to paste that in another sheet, for example, right, and then right-click paste, you will see here that all it's pasting is only the visible cell. So some people like that. So they don't want to confuse people, a lot of different formulas behind it. All I did here was I copied only the visible cells, okay, what I see at the time. Okay? So that's, again, that's just a feature of Excel, depending on what you want to do. Okay? If you notice here in your data, if I go back to the original data, and I were to, let's say, expand this, as I mentioned before, let's go expand all. If you look at Mr. Ronald Black, I know there is a invoice, a credit note in there. So if I wanted to see that, I would unhide this, just so that I go back, unhide, and I would see for the negative amount, it's a credit note. I could, one way is I could build a filter into the report to say, look, don't show me any credit notes. All I want to see is invoices. So we know that credit notes will be zero, a negative amount. So if I can build a filter in the report itself, okay, so what I can do is I can close down this, or let's say I wanted to keep the formatting. I've already formatted this way, right? I'm going to say, do you want to save? I want to cancel out of that. So to save the formatting, what you do is you go back to the report manager, you select the report, right? Then you right-click on it, okay? And then you say save the template, save the Excel template. Again, you can right-click, or you can just go to one of the icons up here, save Excel template, and of course you have to select it. It looks like it's selected, but it isn't. So then it's okay. So yes, that's the format, sure. Yes. So now you have a, if I run it out, the next time it will keep that formatting. Okay. So let's go back now to the report. I want to put a filter in. So for the filter, I want to add a criteria to the line. Now, I think it's this one I use, so that it's greater than 0. Let's type 0 here. So now that filter is added. If I run the report back out again, so I select the report, run. So what I expect to see now is I don't expect to see anything with the no credit notes. There should be no credit notes in there. Okay, so it's open, it's down here, it's flashing, telling me wake up. And now you would see under, I think it was Mr. Ronald Black, there is no credit notes in there. Okay, and all the formatting that I formatted before is still there. Okay, so again, as you can see, the report is becoming more and more useful. Okay, if you wanted to sort this report based on date, for example, we can do that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how we can take this data and basically build a pivot table to make it easier to read the report. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, let's say, clear out, go back to the original, let's expand this. Expand it out. And I'm going to go insert. I'm going to go to pivot. You don't need to do all of this combining, not necessary. but I can also use this data, insert pivot table, and the data, I'm going to look at all this data here. And I'm going to put it on a new worksheet and hit OK. So now what I have is a worksheet number 4, and I'm going to sort the same data, but I'm going to sort it by customer name, right? I'm going to, let's say the total amount here, I'm going to drag it, I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop it like it's hot. Oops, yes. But instead of the count, let's say I wanted to do, instead of the count, I want to do the sum. Right? You see the amounts inside here. You might say, well, William, that looks a little bit ugly simply because I don't see my commas for my thousands, etc. Right in this area here, you could change that. You can say, okay, let's format it so that it looks, use 1,000 commas as a separator, maybe 2 decimal places if I wanted to. And if I hit OK, you will notice that this has changed to something that's a little more easier to read. Okay. If I wanted to put a date, so the document date, I can drag it, drop it inside here, and you will see there's some dates inside here. Okay. If you wanted to sort this by, we can group this by quarters, for example. So I can group it, and I said, let's do, let's just do it that way. So just thank God for an undo button. So, okay, so I should move this into this area here. Oh, I see. So you can move the data around pretty easily if you wanted to. Just my formatting is a little bit different. So we can collapse all the fields if we wanted to, collapse or expand it back to this format here. Okay, and my view, if I could change my view a little bit. So we can, because I have it organized already, it's a little bit different from you know, we can sort the date, group it by quarters, etc. If you wanted to link the template, then again, you do the same thing as we did before. You leave the Excel file open, go back into the report manager, and simply right-click on the report and then save it. Okay. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to create a new container. So the new containers are created from what we call this area here called the connector. Okay. When you open it up, it is usually fully collapsed. You would have to expand it, right? Double-clicking on it would expand it, and you would see a number of possible connections you can make to different types of databases. So you can link to MYOB, ODBC for Excel. We have various Sage products down here. Okay, the one that we are going to be using is the one right on top that's highlighted, called the ODBC driver SQL. When I double-click on that, I see I have 2 options. One is the Sage ACPAC Auto Connect, and also the Sage ACPAC Consolidations. As you can tell, this was built before we renamed it to Sage 300. So if I select the ACPAC Auto Connect, you will notice inside here that there's a number of containers already built. Okay, so the ones with the nice names are already ones that are built beforehand, that comes with the intelligence reporting. Now I'm going to build another one inside here. I was working on this before, so you would see AR cost, but I'm going to build another one. Okay, so to build a new container, what you would have to do is you would right-click here, and then you would say Add a Container. Okay, we can build containers based on 2 tables. We are going to use a very simple one today. We are just going to use a simple table. And that table, we're going to look at AR costs. So AR, I'm looking for AR again. It should be alphabetical order. So AR, it's right up here. Okay. So if I say OK, so that's the first one on top here. Then I would say, okay, what fields do I need? If I expand this, it will be empty. There's nothing. This one here, I did work on it before, and I did pull some information. So I'm creating another one again. Okay, I could rename it again to make it better. So maybe I should let's rename this one to AR. Let's say rename this one to. No, I didn't say. No, I don't want to delete it. Let's rename it. Right click, rename, and let's call it old. Just so it doesn't get mixed up with what I'm doing right now. Now, I'll just minimize that. Okay, so the naming of AR costs, sometimes you might be saying, oh my God, how am I going to learn about that? There is something called a data dictionary or the application object model. And in this, it will tell you what all the tables are. So if I click on AR, for example, right? If I look at, let's say, customers, you see here that information is located in this table called AR costs. If I expand in that table AR customer, there are different fields. So when I go to pull a field, for example, if I say I wanted to fill the ID field, so I should see inside here something called ID cost, which is going to be the customer number. Okay, so this table provides us with all the information that we need to get access to the information and what the tables, what the fields actually mean. There is another way of doing it, which I sometimes use quite a bit. If I go into, let's say, my Sage product, Sage 300, and if I go to customers, and let's say open up a finder in the customer list here, I will see that we have the fields inside here. Now, normally you don't see it like that. I've just changed it before. This is what you would see, right? So if I look here, for example, at the province, right, or state, this is multi-currency, so we have people both in Ontario and the US. Then, if I go to settings, changes, select this field, it changes into the program name. What is in the database, the name of the field. So I can say that this actually means state or province. So this is a quick way of doing that. Okay. So I don't need this anymore. So what I'm doing is I am in my connector. I have created, that's in my connector. I have created a, say I'm going to use this table. Now I need to add the expressions. So I right click on add expressions from that table. I'm making it very simple now. And then now I'm going to select all the expressions, all the fields that are required. So in my case, I'm going to pick, let's say, the customer ID. I might pick the name of the customer. Again, you have to plan in advance what you actually need, okay, which will make life a lot easier. So when you're scrolling down here, now we have to find the stuff. Let's say the name, all the address fields. Now the name, the city, this is the province, and this I think is the country. Okay, I also need, let's say, an amount balance due. So what is due? So I can find it by going, let's say, this way. Now, again, it might be difficult because it's not in alphabetical order. So if I knew the names, maybe I can change it, clicking on the name header here. It will change it into alphabetical order, and then I can say, okay, this is the one I wanted. So hit OK. So now I have these fields in here. When we originally built our data, the names were like English names, and you might be wondering, well, geez, how come it was like in names before? That is because somebody went in here and changed those names or renamed them. So the names coming like this originally, but if you wanted to rename it, let's say this is a customer number, I just click on rename, and I say it's going to be, let's see, I hit OK, and you see it's renamed. So if you're going to be reusing this a lot, maybe you might want to go through that process of doing renaming so it's easier to remember the next time. Okay. So once my container is built with the fields or the expression that I require, then the next step is we would go into our report manager. How do we add a report? At this point, it is the same thing that we did before. That is, we right-click on the folder, we add a report. I'm going to use standard report. The next step is you got to give it a name. So I might call it, here I have to be creative. Let's call it customer. Something hard to think on the fly. Customer information or customer balance due. Right? And then, of course, balance due, that's okay. And then we are asked to select the container. I'm going to select the new one I just created. Okay, and then we see the fields. So you see inside here customer number, which I changed. So at this point, we are now in that room, and we are actually building the report. So now I can select all if that's what I required. But sometimes you don't need all. I can just, for the sake of time, I just click all, and then hit OK. So now I'm back to what I did previously. All I have to do now is run out the report. So highlight it, click on Run. And all the information will come into a sheet that looks like it's going to be an Excel spreadsheet. If I can see it, where is it? Uh-oh. It should be coming soon. I did run it. Let's see, run. Okay. I don't know where it went to. Okay, there it is down here. So let's see what happens. Okay, so I click on it here. So it looks like I did it twice. Okay, so this, again, this is the raw data. And if you wanted to create a pivot table, I just insert pivot table. Where is the data for your pivot table? Yes, it looks like it's highlighting the right area. Hit OK. Right. Oh, insert. Did I do pivot table? Insert pivot table. Pivot table. Put it on a new worksheet. Okay. So I'm going to put it in this worksheet, and then everything I did before. So if I want the customer, the balance due, the amount goes in this column here. I might want to do the customer name instead of customer number, right? Okay, and we can do various things. I should have done a selection to take out zeros, etc. And I can format this in, let's say I wanted to, I can format this amount here. And format. So just so that it looks better. Again, all this is just features of Excel that I'm using right now to make it look pretty, readable, easy to read. If I wanted to do, let's say, I wanted this, there's lots of information here. I only want to see the top, let's say the top 5 or the top 10. Let's do top 5, just to show you we don't have to take the top 10. So I can just type 5 in there. Hit OK. Right? I can even sort this in descending order. So if I click on this and sort, more sort options, and let's say from the largest to the smallest, Hit OK. So it's sorted. If I wanted to build a graph, I can go inside here, pivot chart, and let's say select this, hit OK, and it will be sorted for me, etc. So you can see the use of it, how we have just built a pivot table. So we have gone through this, we have built a report, we have shown you how to link the report, we have created a new container, and we have done all the things that are necessary. So if you have any suggestions as to topics that we need, then please email us. Otherwise, I will conclude today's session. So